Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I have a school psychologist with me who is going to be answering some questions about the career of a school psychologist and some general school psychology questions. So if you're interested, keep on watching. So before we get started, I want to let our special guest introduce herself.
Hi, my name is Berenice and I am finishing up my 4th year as a school psychologist.
So if you guys follow me on Instagram, you saw that I posted on my stories that I was going to be doing this interview for my channel. And so I asked you guys to submit any questions that you guys might have, and I have those here today. And she is on the hot seat, and I'm gonna get those answers for you guys. So let's go ahead and just get started. So are you ready?
I am.
Okay, I have all of the questions here. These were the ones that I found to be the most common that were submitted. And so we're just gonna go ahead and get started with the first question. And that is, what does a typical day look like for you?
So a typical day for me usually begins the night before. I always check my calendar. I like to use Google Calendar, and so that shows pretty much any meetings, testing sessions that I have booked, or counseling sessions. So I look at it the night before, see what site I need to be in. I'm currently in charge of 2 different school sites, a high school and elementary school. And so I make sure to be there on time. I usually begin with checking my emails, and then I go straight into my testing appointments. Kids usually, I have found that they test better during the morning. So I usually try to do some testing in the morning. And then after that, I usually continue with looking at my data, see what I've gathered so far, and then just go from there. Obviously, my schedule sometimes doesn't go perfectly as planned. Because I am in a smaller school district, I do sometimes end up having to help with behaviors, counseling, or anything else that might come up throughout the day.
So do you think that every day is the same for you, or is every day different?
Every day could be different, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, you can have a perfectly planned schedule with your testing appointments and, your time to do your report, but, if we have issues or something happens with the student, especially those that I work directly with counseling, then I have to step in.
Yeah, I've heard that many times. The days are different. There's never like the same day for you. It's not the same. So moving on to the next question, do you do any counseling as a school psychologist?
I do. Like I mentioned, that's part of my schedule, usually throughout the day. Psychologists also do counseling with both students that are in the special education program and general education program. And it varies from one-on-one counseling, group counseling, or, our more severe population where we actually have to do risk assessments and, things of that nature.
Okay, so you're one of the lucky ones that does do counseling.
Yes.
Because a lot of times, many school psychologists don't get to do that, depending on what district they work for, or the county or state.
Yes, correct, yeah.
Question number 3. Do you take work home? And if so, how often?
So when I first began as a school psychologist, especially my internships year, I did take work home. And that was just because at the time, I was kind of in a unique situation. In my school district, I was the only school psychologist. So I was in charge of, I believe it was like 4 sites. And so there was a lot of reports, a lot of work to do. On top of that, I was an intern, and I was learning how to do the assessments, how to write the reports, how to manage my time. So that definitely took me longer to do. So that's why I would end up having to take some work home. And
I think that the first year or two, at least I'm preparing myself to take work home, because you're trying to figure out, your style and what's gonna work, what's not gonna work. And so you're not like super fast at doing what you're doing. You're still trying to like make sure everything is being done correctly, and so you take your time, and so you will end up taking things home.
At the beginning, I probably would take work home maybe 3 days out of the week. Eventually, what I would try to do is just stay at work an hour longer. To try and finish up that work. it's going to be really important for you to have time to be at home and kind of de-stress a little bit. So that's one suggestion.
Yeah. And what about right now? Do you take any home?
Right now, I'm actually, what I just do from home, I do check my emails. That is kind of a really hard habit to break because now your emails are on your phone. So you receive them as a text sometimes. So that I do find myself doing, but writing super long reports, and I rarely do now.
Okay. So I guess prepare to take work home the first 1 or 2 years, and then once you groove, then
and you will have those special cases where you just didn't get to finish a report, or you had to give a new subtest and now you're having to complete it at home because the IEP's the next day. But again, it won't be an everyday thing. At least I hope not.
Do you really have summers off as a school psychologist?
I'm one of the lucky few that I do have summers off. My contracted days are 190 work days, so that does give me some time in the summer to spend with family and, like I said, relax.
Yeah, which is really nice.
Yes.
So I don't know, but there's school psychologists who don't get summers off. They're contracted fully, like all year round.
It depends. It really depends where you end up working. I mean, usually school districts will give their psychologists some time off in the summer. If you work for, I don't know, a private maybe company or a charter school or a different program that works different from your typical school year, then you might have to work during the summer. But I'm one of the lucky few that I do get some summer.
Well, fingers crossed that I get one too. Because moving on to the next question, what are some of the biggest challenges in the school system that directly affect your work?
I think right now a challenge, and I'm sure everybody's heard about, is the pandemic. Right now we're having to work through the distance learning process. We're having to do our IEP meetings virtually too, or through the phone. So that's one of the challenges right now that I'm currently facing. And that includes having to adjust my testing protocols. I am currently still testing. We just do appointments with our students one at a time, which is usually the case. But it's a shorter amount of time, and then we have to have the personal protective equipment and sanitize everything. So it's like a whole process now.
And it's new. So you're definitely not alone, because I see it all over Instagram. A bunch of school psychologists trying to figure out how to get through their duties with all of this in place. But I can imagine it's a big challenge.
And also, aside from the pandemic, we also have the school budget. I work for a public school, which means that we don't always have plenty of resource to have all of the services required for students. Like I said, right now I'm lucky enough where I do work with a second school psychologist, but when I started it was just me. So that can also be a challenge. The budget, you also need a testing supply budget, which can differ year by year.
And do you guys have counselors at your district now?
We do. We do. And that was actually, I'm glad you brought that up, because when I first started, it was, I want to say that it was one other counselor for the elementary school level, and then 2 counselors at the high school level. But as some of you guys know, high school counselors focus more on the academic, and then they try and do some social emotional, but it's mainly academic counseling.
I agree. I think budget can sometimes be challenging, and trying to get the resources for students, and
Definitely.
What are some tips for getting through grad school successfully? Yes, please enlighten us, because a lot of us are trying to figure out how to do it successfully, especially now with the whole pandemic thing. So what are your tips?
My biggest tip is it's going to have to be organization for sure. I had an agenda, and I used my Google Calendar. I mean, I had that calendar hooked up to my phone, and it would send me reminders. What I would try to do at the beginning of each semester was write down in my agenda when the bigger assignments would due, and that was a big help, because we're all humans, we forget. And so I tried to write down everything from the syllabus onto my personal agenda or my Google Calendar, and then it would send me reminders. I would set up the reminders sometimes 2 to 3 days before an assignment was due, just to make sure I had enough time. And I took my books with me pretty much everywhere I could. If it was even on a road trip, I was reviewing information. I stayed in contact with a couple of peers that were in the same program that I was. And so we worked together constantly. And that was probably like the biggest help, because we would remind each other, we would run information by each other, or if we needed to study, we would meet up at a Starbucks or something.
Yeah, I agree. I think staying organized helps a lot. And I like that you mentioned, you know, having those people in your cohort that you can talk to, and you guys can kind of like remind each other about stuff. So maybe you can give me a tip on this, because I find that sometimes it's hard to build relationships with your cohort, because I do work full time and I just go to class and I'm like, okay, I'm there to do what I have to do, and then you know, go home. And so I've had people DM me that, you know, they have a hard time building relationships with their peers. So is there anything that you did specifically to kind of build those friendships, or did it just happen? Or?
With me, it began with group assignments. We would the first thing that I did was just obviously introduce myself, but then we also exchanged numbers. And I know for some people that's a little much, but it worked because then we can just text each other, and then we just started becoming comfortable around each other and familiar with what we needed to do. Yeah,
and we do have, our cohort does have like a group message, so we, you know, we send messages there, like if we want everybody to know. There's like 2 other people that I talk to that I can text separately, but I feel like, I guess you
have this picture of, you know, entering and you guys become best friends, and you guys are like
caffeine. I mean, for my coffee,
lots of coffee. I know.
Coffee or tea. Because it is hard, you know, for some of us that are working full time, we have our children, you know, our families to take care of, and then making that time, I would have tried to make time at night to, like I said, look at my assignments, do my readings, and then do whatever I needed to do towards the end of the day.
Yeah, same. I do all of my work at night because I have the 2 little ones, and I just, nighttime is my go-to to do my work. So all right, so let's go to the next question. So somebody asked, how much of your day is spent directly working with kids versus report writing, meetings, things like that?
I would say that the majority of my day is spent working with kids. Like I mentioned, I try to do as much testing as possible, and I don't just test like one student at a time per day. It's multiple. If you know, once you organize your caseload, you see all those due dates coming up, and you just try to get this assessment plans out so you can start testing multiple students at a time. So I'm seeing multiple students throughout the day, and then I also have my small counseling batch of students that I also work with. So it's most of the day. The paperwork, I usually don't start. Again, I try to do a little bit of paperwork in between, but it's usually towards the end of the day that I do my reports, my, you know, data analyzing and collecting and all that. And then if I'm not doing that, we also have to do observations. So we're in the classrooms. So the majority of the day is spent working with kids.
So how many children a day do you think you see for your assessment and counseling?
So obviously not counting right now that it's, you know, the pandemic is happening, but in a typical school year, I say I possibly see anywhere from 5 to 8 different students. Whether, like I said, whether it's testing, observations, counselings, or just I have to help, you know, de-escalate a student. It just, like I said, it varies day by day, but usually between 5 or 8.
Yeah. And so you do spend a lot of your time with children.
I do.
Yeah,
yes.
And that can vary. I'm sure it depends on the school you work for and your duties, because not every school has the same requirements, expectations from their school psychologist.
Yes,
so.
and I do have to point out that I work at a smaller school district, so the psychologist, we wear many hats. You know, a lot of our staff in the district wear many hats. And so that's why I end up seeing more students, because I do have to take on different roles, whether it's, you know, counseling, helping de-escalate a student, or just doing testing. Some of the bigger districts, at least I've heard, just do testing, so they might see maybe less kids.
Yeah, I've heard that too. That there's some school psychologists that all they do is test, and so it's not, you know, the same as doing counseling and things like that.
Yeah.
How did you decide to become a school psychologist?
So when I first began my career in education, you can say, I originally wanted to be a teacher. So I began with doing basic classroom observations to see what I wanted to do, where I wanted to teach. But then that didn't necessarily appeal to me as much. So I started working for a non-public school where it was mainly students with special needs. There, that opened up a whole world into special education and different roles. One of those roles was school psychologist. I was lucky enough to be able to work with and interview a variety of different people, like school psychologists, counselors, social workers, clinicians. I mean, a variety of people that would come in and work with those kids. And so that's when I started to look into the school psychology world. And so after that, I started working with the kids. I kind of just really was intrigued by the whole process and how their minds worked. So that's pretty much what led me to want to be a school psychologist, all that hands-on experience. That was definitely a really important factor for me.
The next question, which was a common one that was submitted, was how easy or how hard was it to find a job after graduating?
So for me, it was fairly easy to find an internship. I looked online mainly. There's different sites you can use. One of them is EdJoin, and that's what I went through. I looked at the different internship positions, and at the time, there was a variety of postings. I went in a handful of interviews, and I was able to get an internship, a full-time paid internship, which I know that sometimes that is not always the case.
Yeah. So I'm hoping that I can find one.
Yes.
So, and after your internship, did you find a job right away, or did they hire you?
They hired me. They kept
Okay.
me in the district, so I continued to work in the same district, and actually have been in the same district these 4 years.
Yeah.
Which is, again, another thing that's been, I guess, lucky on my end.
Yeah, definitely very lucky. So you got a paid internship before you even graduated.
Yeah.
And then you graduated and they ended up hiring you.
Yes.
And you've been there
Yes.
ever since.
Yes.
So.
And I mean, I do want to say that it was a lot of work at the beginning. So I think that they were definitely happy to see how much work I was able to do while I was there.
Do you think that if you get paid to do your internship, the expectations are different from doing like a non-paid internship? Do you think that because they're paying you, they want you to do certain things, or they expect you to do a lot of things on your own? Or
I think that, sorry.
No, it's okay. Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
I think that the expectations are the same because, you know, as many of you guys know, going through your program right now, we have deadlines, and those are legally binding deadlines. So any district, whether it's paid or non-paid, they expect you to help, you know, get those kids tested, have those IEPs, make sure that those IEPs and the reports are legally defensible, that you are able to complete all these things in a timely manner. So I think that, like I said, the expectations are going to be similar.
Yeah, whether paid or not.
Yes.
What is one thing you didn't learn in your program that you wish you would have learned?
I definitely wished I would have received an extra class or two on behavior intervention plans and functional behavior analysis. I think that those two categories are its own world, aside from everything else that a school psychologist has to do. So I really do wish I would have just received an extra, like I said, an extra class, or, you know, some type of extra support when it came to FBAs and the behavior intervention plans. Yes, definitely.
The next question somebody asked is, how has testing been affected since working from home?
Okay, so this is a really good question. So although, you know, there are no students currently attending at my site, I am required to be at the site and do testing. But again, we have to take a couple of different measures to avoid the spread. So we're having to book appointments for our students. With the, like I said, the PPE equipment, we're having to sanitize our offices, our testing areas. You know, we're having to wear our clear face shields, our, you know, masks, and we're having to sanitize our testing materials. So, you know, technically I don't get to work from home right now. I'm still going into my office.
Yeah. So you think, I mean, I'm guessing that it's just taking longer to get through your assessments,
Yes,
because
it
you have to do all of these like pre-things, like sanitize, get everything
Yes.
organized, and then do the assessment, and then, you know, sanitize again, and do all of that. And so you have students scheduled?
I do. I'm having to schedule students with larger breaks in between for sanitation purposes. We're also doing temperature checks. We're having to do questionnaires. That maybe a questionnaire that you would typically do at a medical office. We're having to do some of those questionnaires when they're arriving for testing. And again, it's just to keep our kids safe.
And are you guys having IEP meetings in person or no?
Not in person. We're having our IEP meetings through Zoom, which is, I know, a popular platform, or through the phone.
Yeah. Is there a high demand for school psychologists?
In my opinion, because we're located in California, there is a consistent demand for school psychologists. Like I said, we're able to provide a variety of services, like counseling, the testing. We're able to help within the classroom setting as well. So it's, in my opinion, that I think it's been pretty consistent. As far as the demand.
Yeah, and I've heard that it's increasing. So I think, like, I don't know, the next couple of years, the demand is going to go up higher. I think it depends, like you said, where you are. Because in California, I've heard that down south, in Southern California, there's still a demand, but it's very competitive because they have so many programs, so many people going into these programs. So even though there's a lot of jobs, there's a lot of people as well. And then we're in Northern California, so over here it's not as competitive, I don't think. But, you know, it just depends where you are.
It is, and there's a higher focus, I feel like, on mental health in general in California. So that also helps keep the demand higher.
Going on to the next question, somebody asked, when did you start becoming comfortable with your job as a school psychologist?
You know, that's a really good question because I feel like I am still trying to get comfortable in my position. As a school psychologist, you never really stop learning. So you're always gonna have to stay up to date with any new changes in the special education law in general. You are also, some districts require you to go to professional development. So you're constantly learning, you're constantly trying to get comfortable with any new information that you have learned. So.
And you probably just slowly start to get more confident.
That's actually a good way to explain it. You do get more confident, especially in IEP meetings when you're having to report on your findings. So you do get more comfortable. You do get a little bit faster on how you deliver the information, but I would say that I'm still
working.
Always
learning.
Still working on that.
Would it be possible to retire early as a school psychologist?
You know, I'm pretty sure a lot of us wish we could retire early, period. But it's gonna depend on your own individual, you know, financial, you know, ability, I guess.
I guess if you're rich, you can retire early.
I know that the retirement age in, again, California, it's 65, or 55.
I think 65.
Sure. We're too young for that right now, so I don't know. But it's just gonna depend 100% on your financial, I guess.
Situation.
Correct.
So, and if you can afford to retire early.
Exactly.
So we're almost done. 2 more questions. What would you say takes up most of your time in the job?
What takes up the most time, I feel like, as of now, is the report writing piece. When you're putting together the report, you're looking at a lot of data. You collect data from your assessments, obviously, but you also are going to have to collect data from parents, teachers, the student observations. So putting this whole picture together is going to take some time. So that definitely takes longer, in my opinion.
Report writing.
Yes.
Okay, and the last question is, how is the salary as a school psychologist?
Again, that's also going to vary depending where you are located. We're in California. I know that the salary can range from maybe $50,000 a year to $120,000 a year.
Where you're located,
Yes.
your experience,
Definitely.
obviously. And I have a video that I previously recorded on how much school psychologists make, so you guys can check that out. And yeah, it's just keep in mind, it just depends where you are, what state, what county, what district. So
Exactly.
you can do your research and just kind of search around your area to see, you know, what the average pay is.
Yeah.
All right, guys, so those were all the questions. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Thank you to Berenice for being here today and answering all of these questions. She is a friend of mine and I invited her to come on so, you know, we can get these questions answered, because I get questions in my DMs often that I might not know the answers to, and so I wanted to give you guys the opportunity to submit questions that I could ask on your behalf, and so thank you for answering them. And if you guys don't follow me on Instagram, follow me, because I post a lot on there and sometimes post things like this on my IG story. So if you guys want to participate, make sure you follow me on Instagram. Also, make sure you like this video, subscribe, and let us know if you guys have any questions or comments. So I will see you guys in my next video. Bye.
Dude, if this is like,
Imagine if it was recording, I'd be so pissed off.
oh gosh, if this is like cringeworthy, don't post it.